So I got cut off because someone decided to call me in the middle of my video. Okay, so as I was saying, she's not gonna have an easy time, obtaining assets from the family should like any of her parents pass away and they have property that needs to be divided amongst people. She might have to fight for that, or there might be again some discussions amongst the family regarding assets, so she will have a hard time pertaining to that. Let's see what else. So we have also the Lord of the 8th house, which is Scorpio in the 1st house. We're talking about Mars again. So her personality was very much formed by very transformative events in her life, whether if they were good or if they were bad. So she's also the type of person to hold a lot of intensity in her personality. She can also have, again, an aggressive personality since Mars is sitting in her 1st house, or intense personality. So throughout her life, she might have gone through a lot of ups and downs with the males in her life. She might even have had to have gotten into physical altercations at times throughout her life, possibly with males again, since we have Mars in the 1st house. So that's that pertaining to Mars. And then again, she is very prone to surgeries because the 8th house is somehow related to her 1st house, and that again deals with sharp objects, surgeries, and that's having to do with Mars sitting in her 1st house of the body. Moving on. So she's also pretty much, I guess you would say, kind of down to earth. I wouldn't say she necessarily has an ego like some people. She doesn't feel it necessary, to, act self-important or anything like that. She might at times been seen to have like a magnetic personality. And then again, very influenced by mystical subjects or the occult, or that's what kind of interests her quite a bit. She also has a mind to kind of be curious and investigating certain subjects or diving deeper into matters. So it kind of reminds me of how she's very much always posting stuff regarding like the whole child pedophilia rings going on right now, or the Save Our Children initiative. So again, she's a type of person, since her sun is in Scorpio in the 8th house, she has a keen interest into like diving deeper under the surface and investigating such topics. Again, anything related to hidden subjects. She wants to illuminate that area of discussion and then shine light on it, or to bring some form of awareness. Also with the moon in the 7th house in Libra, so the moon kind of just pretty much represents your emotional intelligence in astrology. It also could represent your mother and then also your mind. So having her moon in the 7th house would have her have like a very practical mind, since it's sitting in the 7th house, which also deals with partners or the spouse or marriage. Her partner would have been the type to kind of, take charge of the assets within the marriage. And then again, since her moon, her mind, and her emotional stability is sitting in the 7th house of the spouse, those two things are intertwined. So hypothetically, if her marriage was doing bad, you could expect her emotional state to also be doing bad. And then since the 7th house also aspects the 1st house of the self, she could have found herself at times like not being able to have an identity without her partner, or she would look to other people to kind of know who she was at times. Perhaps maybe that's why she was prone to also being in an abusive relationship. But also having the moon in this placement, the 7th house, since the 7th house also deals with, other people or business. She has the capability to be like a good business person if she wanted to. And that's something that she could possibly do if she wanted to. And I'll get more into that because there's other placements here that kind of, you know, indicate that she'd probably be better off having her own business rather than working for other people. When we discussed the mother, as I mentioned, the moon can represent the mother. Her mother might have been also the type of person, perhaps she didn't work, because I asked her, like, what is your mother's occupation? What was that? So she told me she was like a homemaker, I believe, or just a stay-at-home wife. But that doesn't necessarily say that, you know, she's not gonna have like a business-like mentality, because she could have been like a bargainer when it came to like either shopping, or she was very keen on, like, you know, making good deals perhaps when, you know, they're out and about. But anyways, so also, so since we have the moon here, the mother could have also influenced, I guess, the meeting of the spouse. And I kind of asked her how she met her ex-spouse, because they're now divorced. She kind of told me that, I'll go and discuss that later, but she told me when she met her spouse, like, the mother was somehow nearby. So again, mother was somehow involved with, you know, maybe the encounter with the spouse. So having this placement in the second house becomes the 8th place from the moon. So again, this isn't necessarily a good placement when it pertains to family, because it could indicate here conflict with family or sudden ups and downs in life. Since again, we have the Lord of the 5th house, Cancer, which is sitting in the 7th house, again, the moon. So her creative self-expression comes when she's in a relationship, or she finds relationships to be of a muse to her. I did ask her if she ever thought about writing, or if she enjoyed writing. She told me like she actually does enjoy it. But having this placement, again, since the 7th house deals with the masses or the external world or other people, having moon here could make her, you know, capable of producing something creative that could be projected out to the masses and then therefore appreciated by the masses. So again, there's also indications on her chart that kind of insinuate that she would have been like a very creative person or a writer. So I kind of asked her, like, have you ever thought about publishing any of your writings or something like that? Because I feel as though maybe that's something that could be appreciated for you in terms of your work. Moving on, since we have a Lord of the 6th house, Cancer, in the 7th house. So again, the mother in her life could have posed some form of obstacle to her, especially like pertaining to the people that she interacted, since the moon is sitting in the 7th house of other people. She might have also had some form of say in who she chose as a spouse, or I kind of asked her, like, did she influence, you know, who you married or that decision? She's like, well, my mother didn't necessarily like my spouse. Also, so this could either pertain to her or the mother. So having the moon in this placement, this could kind of indicate that she kind of gets some form of emotional balance by, you know, solving other people's problems or disputes. And then I'm gonna look now at the Saturn placement, because I kind of was curious as to like why she's had maybe hard times in her life. So I kind of looked to Saturn in this case. And Saturn was sitting in her 3rd house of Gemini. So the 3rd house does represent siblings or communication, and then also the mind, since it is related to Mercury originally. So this could indicate, again, Saturn restricts wherever it sits in whatever house it sits. So Should Saturn be sitting in her third house, this would have restricted the relationships with her siblings. Their relationships might have been kind of distant. Siblings would always be possibly starting conflict with her or attacking her. Essentially, based off Vedic beliefs or astrology, they do believe in reincarnation, you know. So in this case, with Saturn here, it pretty much indicates that you're gonna have a hard time within your siblings because of maybe any past karma that she might have had in the past life, and now she's kind of paying for it in this way, in this life. So again, siblings become a rivalry for her. When it comes to her mind or intellect, because again, the third house is related to Mercury, which represents the mind, because we also have Gemini here. This kind of indicates, and Saturn is restricting, like maybe her thought process and maybe the speed that she worked, or how fast she might have grasped certain things, or how long she spent thinking about things. Would have been a very slow process for her, or she could have spent a lot of time mulling over subjects rather than, you know, someone really scratching the surface and then moving on to the next thing. So that could have been her mind or her mental behavior, perhaps when it came to education. Also, since Saturn is restricting in this house, this could have also possibly made her self-conscious in what, you know, her siblings thought of her, what they would say to her, or perhaps the external world. She might have been put down by other people. So again, Saturn here isn't necessarily a good thing, but it still kind of makes her like a really good orator or a speaker if she wanted to be a speaker, or even a writer, again, because Gemini deals with communications. So she has the capability to really get through people in speech by, I guess, speaking long periods of time slowly, so therefore people can really hear what she is saying and then grasping whatever concept she's trying to convey. When it comes to writing, she has the ability to write for a very long time. So let's say hypothetically she wanted to write a book, she would probably more than likely create a whole series, kind of like J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter. She has like a whole series of books. Moving on, having Saturn here also kind of indicates that she would have been a lifelong learner of philosophy. Again, she could make a good novelist, since Saturn aspects the 5th and 9th house of teachers and gurus. Also, since the 5th house, actually deals with education, kind of would have restricted her timing in terms of graduating from school. I asked her, did you graduate from school? She kind of told me she didn't, I believe. She ended up moving to LA at some point in her life. So also 5th house does deal with government or politics, since the 5th house is originally ruled by Leo, and Leo pertains to royalty, again, government. So she would have taken interest in this, but not until like the later half of her life. So again, very into philosophy and spirituality. And then now looking at the Jupiter placement, so this is where I talk about where she's more likely to benefit in life. Let me just plug in my charger really fast because I forgot to plug it in. I don't want my battery to drain. So anyways, okay, so having Jupiter here in her 9th house, so Having Jupiter here in the ninth house, Jupiter is sitting along with two other good planets that are good for this house or that are good together. So Jupiter's conjunct Venus and then Mercury. So again, this kind of blows up her creativity because Jupiter expands everything or whatever house it sits in, and then also expands her creativity because Venus is creative, and then Mercury deals with communications or writing. So I feel like she would more than likely benefit from her creative ventures either through communication or writing. What else? So a lot of times when it pertains to romantic partners, since we're talking about Venus, which is also related to romance, this again, since all these planets are sitting in the ninth house of higher learning and philosophy, this would indicate that she's not romantically attracted to anyone unless you kind of have some form of substance pertaining to those subjects. Like if you're a philosophical or spiritual person, she's going to be drawn to you. If you're not any of that, more than likely she's not going to be drawn to you. She also is likely to come into contact with female gurus or teachers. And then again, she has a lot of admiration for her teachers. And she's also going to desire making money throughout life through creative or spiritual measures. I guess on the bad side of this placement, this would just kind of indicate that she has like high expectations of other people that can't necessarily be met all the time. And then could be the case, I don't know her that well, but it could be the case with this conjunction that it kind of makes a person a little bit materialistic at times. But I guess those are just minor things indicated there that could possibly be negative. So now I'm going to discuss more or less what I believe to kind of be the explanation to her ex-partner's or ex-husband's personality type. So now I'm going to discuss the husband. So as you guys know, in astrology, Jupiter does represent the husband in a woman's chart. So we have this big conjunction, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus in the ninth house, and this specific nakshatra called Jyeshta, and Jupiter is sitting, or actually all these three planets are actually sitting in Pada 2. So this Pada in particular, if you guys imagine, like we have Jyeshta, which is like a stellar constellation, and if you divide that up into smaller sections, it would be placed in the second section. So this specific section is ruled by Scorpio. So again, she has a lot of Mars energy in her birth chart, and then relation to Scorpio here. So when it comes to discussing her husband, this particular nakshatra, this particular Pada number 2, I believe would make her husband have a personality type to be very aggressive, or have also again a negative ego at times. He could have had like a very vengeful personality type where, okay, if you would anger him, he'd probably come after you. And also this could have been at times where he could have possibly be blinded by rage. So again, this isn't necessarily a very good placement pertaining to Jupiter, and like when relating it to the possible husband, ex-husband now. But now we kind of understand why. Okay, so also when we look at someone's birth chart and then the Jupiter placement and what house it sits in, and then also what sign, Jupiter is sitting in the ninth house. So the ninth house actually represents travel or long distance travel, philosophy, higher education. So having Jupiter here would indicate that she would have met her husband through any one of these things. So I asked her how she met her husband. She told me she met him while on a cruise when she was a teenager. So again, that's a long distance trip away from home. So there you have it. And then to kind of cap this off, I'm just going to end it with her 11th house, since the 11th house does represent your wishes that you kind of obtain throughout life, whether certain things for you like marriage are going to be fulfilled, etc., or if you're going to get like a big chunk of money. That's what the 11th house represents. So here, I guess having Saturn sitting in this house, because on her 11th house she has Capricorn, so Saturn rules Capricorn, and then it's sitting in the 3rd house. Okay, so Capricorn, Saturn again restricts. So when we look at in terms of marriage, having Saturn here would have made, you know, the marriage hard. Like, could have been a long-lasting marriage, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, say like it's gonna be, oh, a fantastic marriage. I would say it probably wouldn't. Also, when it pertains to assets or gains, like large gains of money, this is going to indicate that she has to work hard or put a lot of effort into making big money, because it isn't going to be given to her all that easily. And then also kind of aspects of 3rd house, which again, you know, incurs that, you know, she would have some form of slow communication when she speaks. And then again, I would suggest her in particular to become like either a business person or a writer, or to find some kind of method to make money off creative pursuits for her. So yeah, that's pretty much my breakdown of her D1 birth chart. As you guys know, there's different types of charts in Vedic astrology. You have your birth chart, which kind of does talk about like your early part of life, and then maybe some events throughout life, like the big events where you meet your husband, etc. Then you have your D9 chart, what kind of like talks about, you know, your later part of life, your second half of life, your marriage, your spouse, and the condition of the marriage. So pretty much skim through the first chart, which is the D1 chart. So that's my breakdown of her chart. I hope she likes what I kind of found on her chart, or my recommendations for her. I would tell her, you know, find some form of creative pursuit, or, you know, start your own business, etc., because she's really better off working on her own versus working in a team or group setting. So that's my breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want a birth chart analysis, feel free to reach out to me through my Facebook information, which could be found on my about section on my channel. Or if you guys want your own birth chart analysis, reach out to me. I'd be more than glad to help you guys. Okay, so I'll see you guys later.